Hi, I'm Tammy Ven Dange, your host for Executive with a Cause. And today on this show, I welcome Julie Nichols. She's the founder and managing director of Handmade Canberra, a social enterprise supporting local makers and designers. Today, we're going to chat about the good, the bad, and the hard things about running a social enterprise. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tammy.
I know you from the fact that I actually have another business. I know you from two things. One, as a customer of your massive markets here in Canberra, but also because I have another business that was supposed to be a stallholder for the market multiple times, which hasn't actually happened because of all the lockdowns here. Yeah. But still keen at some point to maybe be able to experience that from the other end. For those people that are not familiar with Handmade Canberra, though, could you please tell us more about it?
Sure. Well, Handmade Canberra started quite a while ago, so we're now into our 14th year.
Wow.
It came about by the fact that I always had a creative side, so I'm a trained milliner, which is a hat maker for those that don't know. And I had done market stalls, and we had been here in Canberra, and I had travelled around quite a lot of Australia as well, and done market stalls, and then come back to Canberra and then realised that perhaps Canberra had a space for a market for people who created their own product, so who made their own product. And then that sort of morphed into an Australian-made market, so designers, producers for things that are made here or grown here in Australia.
So what are some examples of the kind of stall holders that would be at your place versus someone else's?
Pretty much everything you can imagine. We have somebody registered that sells or makes or grows that. So at the moment, when we are going, there's 3 large pavilions out at Exhibition Park in Canberra. And one pavilion's just completely full of food, all types of food and drink that you can imagine. So there's the ready-to-eat food vans, the bowl, the burgers, the pressed juices, everything that you can consume on the spot. But then there's also your biscuits and your brittle and chocolates and cakes and breads. And then there's also a full bar area, so lots of boutique breweries and distillers. So pretty much everything you possibly want to eat and drink. And then the other 2 pavilions are full of everything else. So your jewellery, your homewares, your things for children, your outdoor garden sculptures, your artwork, your stationery, candles, homewares, ceramics, just the smartest, most clever people. Like, I'm totally in awe every time we have one, just to see how clever people are. And to be part of Handmade, it has to be their product that they have made.
It's amazing to think that much talent is
it's extraordinary.
available.
It's extraordinary. And one of my favourite conversations is that one time I found myself walking around the market, and it can get quite busy, so sometimes you have to walk quite slow, and I was behind 2 ladies, and they were having a discussion about the fact that they didn't think things here were handmade. So I couldn't help myself, and I had to stop and ask them. And they said, well, it's just too good. Like, it's the quality's, it's too good, and it's consistent, and they just had trouble believing. So I asked them who it was specifically, and I took them to the person. We had a great conversation. They thought it was fantastic, and they were really able to get the story behind the product. And they're like, we just really didn't think it was possible.
Wow. So how do you verify that someone is actually making it themselves rather than having it produced elsewhere?
Sure. Well, we have, everybody who comes to a market has to pre-register, and I guess handmade can be, fairly loose interpretation, and we have to take a few people a lot of people at their word. But also if you're an author and you have a book, you don't print every single book. That book gets printed for you, and it needs to be printed in Australia, but of course that part has to be done by somebody else. So it has to be of your original design or concept. It can be made then from components or, put together by somebody else, but that has to be done in Australia. So, for example, like the author, they can have their book printed in Australia, or even a seamstress. It has to be their design, A lot of people print their own fabrics, or they might get the fabric from overseas. So that has an overseas element to it, but it's their design that they sew, or it's their fabric that they print and it's their design, but then they get somebody else to actually sew it for them somewhere in Australia. So, there are a few moving parts to it.
I think it's in this day and age where logistics in general has been really hard for a lot of makers. How has that impacted some of them? Because I know personally from that other business, I've had to import just packaging material for the product, and that's been really challenging. How have they been impacted through this process?
At the start of the pandemic, it almost worked in their favour in that because they made a lot of it themselves, they weren't really impacted that much by the supply chains, and because we had everything in Australia. As time went on, then there was a bit of an impact, but being a very resourceful lot, a lot of them just worked around it. So they found either Australian people who make packaging or what it was that they were missing, or they just created it themselves.
It is a very entrepreneurial group, isn't it?
Yeah.
For people that haven't seen this particular event, like when you say pavilion, I mean, we're really talking about airplane hangers. Like this is not a tiny thing.
No.
How many stall holders would you have at any point?
At any one event, we have 290 stall holders. So we take up about 6,000 square metres.
Wow. And how many of those people are from around this area?
Yeah, so it's we're Australian made, and although we're located in Canberra, an event of that size can't be just for Canberra and region stall holders because it couldn't be that big. So we have about 40% from Canberra, and the rest come from all over Australia.
Okay. So it's still a pretty decent size of given the community of Canberra.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And for those types of makers, to me, there's a lot more logistics than people realize when it comes to just setting up a stall in this type of environment, which is a really high-end market. When people think about some of these markets, they might think about a general farmer's market where you just put up a table and then you sell stuff. Like, what actually goes into the making of such a massive event for both you and the stall holders?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a fairly big and complex deal. We have our market 4 times a year, and it can take us 3 months to organise one of these events, and as long for a stall holder to organise and make enough product as well. Markets sort of they've come a long way in that we still have our farmers markets and our craft markets, and there's always a spot for those markets as well. But it's funny, about 10 years ago, a lot of the bigger design markets all started at the same time around Australia, and I think it was realised that there was a place for a higher end product rather than just a little bit trash and treasure or craft or there's a lot goes into it. So for instance, we'll put out expressions of interest, and then that'll take a week to come back, and then it takes us a week to curate. You send out offers, there's building the directories, there's making sure that all the paperwork's done, there's the stall allocations. Sometimes I equate it a little bit like a big crazy Greek wedding where perhaps not everybody gets along. Like it's a lot of moving parts, and all of that's done before you even get there. So then you've got to bump in 290 stalls all to be set up at the same time. That's a lot of cars and a lot of people and a lot of movement. There's forklifts and there's trolleys and there's electrical cables and power, and lots and lots goes into it before the first customer even walks in the door. And then speaking of the customer, you've got to get those customers there, and they've got to know where to go and when it's on and where to park, and is there an ATM and where are the bathrooms? And there's a lot to it.
It's logistically quite a big piece. How many employees do you have?
We have a staff of 5, and we all sort of work. They work 3 to 4 days a week.
And during the events themselves, do you have volunteers or do you rope in casuals? How does that work?
We have the same team members and then we have a few extras. I've got a couple of girlfriends that have been doing it with me since day dot, and they're like, no, we would never not be there. So they come along and help, and we've been going for 14 years, so my kids are a lot older now, so it's their job to come along as well. So, yeah, we have a group of our team and then a few other members who just like to come along and hang out.
Well, it's gone from, it sounds like just a family and friends to something larger, though. Like there's a true community that you've built.
There is, yeah, absolutely. And I think at the heart of it, that's what's kept us going. Without that community, 2.5 years of a pandemic and not running a market, it's the community that's kept us here.
Well, we could go down a couple of question lines. I wanted to ask, first of all, with the community aspect of that. You know, when we first spoke and I invited you to this show, you didn't think you're a social enterprise. And I gave you my definition, which is not, it's not like you'll find in the dictionary, but it was basically the fact that I thought your mission to support designers and makers locally was so loud that I couldn't help but think that you're a social enterprise, rather than making a for-profit. So that community aspect is actually quite visible even for someone who's not a stallholder, I think. How do you do that? Like, that is so hard to do for even a business. How do you create that community?
I don't know how you run a business and not create that community. To me, it was at the crux of why you would do something. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're running a business, you need to be feeding your own family and paying your employees. So that's very important as well. But if you're not sustainable as a business, well, then you can't continue to go on. And the fact that, I have 600 stallholders registered with me, that's my responsibility to make sure that we do continue so that they can continue to make money as well. And then all those customers that come along. But, it's just a great community. And it feels great and everybody's happy to be there and everybody understands, as a customer that they're there and what they're going to find, but the same as a stallholder as well. To me, it was just something that naturally occurred and I don't think I could run a business without one.
Well, certainly you would have a special nurturing personality to help that many people. Do you ever find you're just giving business advice?
Oh, all the time. Daily.
Yeah. So what are the common things that you have to do? Because these are usually small makers, right? They're not very large businesses generally. And some of them, I assume, are side hobbies or...
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a massive responsibility and it's one that I take very seriously. And, that was just made just so much harder during a pandemic of... to come to one of our events, yes, I will put thousands and thousands of customers in front of you, but it's not cheap to attend either. It's a big responsibility for a small business to sign up and come to one of our events. So, the stalls themselves aren't cheap because it's a big process to put the event on. But then there's the stock that you have to create and, you might be needing to take time off work yourself because not a lot of people, some of them it's their full-time job and some of them have other jobs as well. So there's a lot to it and it's a big responsibility to make sure that what you pay for is what, is going to work for you as well. So, it has to work. And so, if we do get stallholders to pre-register, and with that sometimes we have to tell people that we just don't think this event is for them or they may just not be ready for it yet. So, photographs are important and the way they write their bio is important. And those things have never been as important as when there's a pandemic and you can't see something physically. So all you have to go by is that photo and how they write that and how does their website work and is it functioning properly? So, it really matters to us because then that reflects on us as a business as well. So if if our stall holders don't do well, then we don't do well. So we're constantly sort of saying, well, look, I think if you use a different photo, or we're going to rewrite it so that your SEO sort of works better on our website and therefore better on your website because we're linked. And so there's a lot to it. And that's important to us as well, is that you guys do well and we do well.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense from a business perspective, but at the same time, you only have 5 staff members total, right? So that's a lot of work for that many people.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
Are you finding that these stall holders have continued business throughout this period, knowing that there wasn't markets? Or are you finding some that are more so than normal closed because of the changes to the economy?
Yeah, it's been a bumpy ride. At first when the pandemic was called and the first market was closed, we all thought it might be a week or two. And, here we are 2.5 years later. Who knew? It's been a little bit tricky in a lot of ways, that some stall holders took to it like a duck to water. They're like, oh, yeah, I can stay home in my pajamas and sell from online. And, they love that and they really took to it. Some people, it put just so much fear into them. They're like, well, I don't have a website and it's not my world. And it really worried them a lot. Some people did close down. They just straight off the bat said, I can't do this. I will be closing down and just getting work elsewhere. Some people just went, nope, I will take the challenge and I will go with it. We spent a lot of time as well just making sure that we could help where we could. We did things like we ran digital boot camps, and being a stall holder with us, you have access to our resource area as well. So on that, there's a course on there at the moment that can teach you to take photographs, good product photos with your phone. Because those things are really important now. So, yeah, we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years just looking, well, what are the business resources that these people need and can use, and how do we get it to them, and then how do we go from there?
Well, I remember when the first lockdown happened, and it almost was the same the second time, I think, where people were already in town. Their inventory had already arrived. They had plans already in hotels and such before you received notification that you couldn't run it. Yeah. Yet people were like, yep, that's what happens. It was really amazing from that community perspective that people were cheering you on to say, we know it's not your fault. Yeah, we just did all this, but
yeah,
oh well.
And that to me is amazing. I feel a massive responsibility, even though I know I'm not the cause of the pandemic or anything like that, because those stall holders, they're putting their trust in you, I suppose, and they're hoping that it goes ahead as much as we hope it goes ahead. But, they still then, the ones that travel and they book accommodation and they travel and they've made the product and, it's a big commitment. So it was devastating each time it gets locked down, and we have been fairly unlucky. We've put so much planning, and so many times I've heard myself say, right, we'll be good this time. I've taken what I've learnt from the last one, put it into our risk management plan, work that around. The only thing that could lock us down as Canberra goes into a lockdown, of which we haven't had for 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
pandemic goes, here you go.
Same week. Yeah, same week.
2 days before. And, so it's fairly horrendous. But, it just, on one hand, it's just so amazing to hear people say, it's okay, thank you so much for trying, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, I'm a little bit gutted that it's the same people taking the same beating over and over and over again. It's soul destroying.
Yeah, well, especially those with perishable products.
Absolutely.
That was tough. But you did have a way to help people, and you pivoted quite quickly to the online store and the online market opportunities. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Look, I won't lie. We announced that we would have a virtual market the same day that we were told that we were closed down. And then we sat down and went, Okay, anybody know what that is? So, we announced, this is great. So, we had a great web guy who we just said, right, we need this to happen. Luckily, we did have a website that worked. It was a great website as it was. So, everybody who has a store with us has a directory listing on our website. He was able to embed some functionality so that behind the scenes, the stallholder could then pop in an extra 100 words and a link then to their website. So what would they be selling online? Why is it different? And then when our virtual market opened, that would show. So then the customer could see, their normal 100 words and bio and photos, but now they had the opportunity to see that they were running a 2-for-1 offer or the flavours of the macarons that they were going to have there, and then a link through to the website as well. So we were able to get that to come online pretty quickly.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It was fantastic. We've been really supported so well, and people have just taken it in and said, look, this is just how we're going to shop now, and it's worked really well for what it is. I don't think anybody can really replace the feel and the atmosphere and being able to talk to a person face to face and the smells and the tastes and everything. That won't go away. But for what it was at the time, it was fantastic.
But you sound, from my experience, it looks like you also generated a secondary revenue for yourself at the same time, which was brilliant, by creating a sort of a membership.
Yes. So it, and as you've touched on, all of this is very labour intensive. If you think of every person and we're looking at their 5 photos and reading their words and checking their links, and then, working with them to make that a little bit better and getting all those resources in the back end and, making sure our website works and has this extra functionality, that's a lot. So it doesn't just happen by, somebody sitting down and doing it in 10 minutes. So we sort of took all of that and thought, well, how do we continue to be sustainable? Because at the end of the day, we want to be here when markets do come up back so people can continue to make money. So one of the things that we did do is that when a stallholder does register to be a handmade stallholder, there is a $100 admin fee. So that's a yearly fee. And for that, you will make sure that we will make sure that your listing works, that you have so we've got a full permanent directory on our website of nearly 600 Australian-made small businesses.
Wow.
That is massive. So, that's part of what that goes towards. But the other thing is then you have access to that resource area, and not only do we have stallholder discounts, so, we have a discount with Australia Post for our members. We have a discount to a range of stationery and packaging. We have the discounts to all those business resources. So, you can learn to do your social media and learn to take photos at a really good discounted price. There are 30 or 40 business blogs and, how to set up a stall, how to optimise a business listing, how to do SEO. It's all there. So it all goes towards that as well. So we wanted to make sure that, if we were going to be charging people who are already struggling and doing it hard any more money, you had to get your money's worth for sure. So we think for, the 30 or 40 cents a day that it's really good value for money.
Well, what a great pivot, too.
Thank you.
You think about it. You're worried about all your stall holders being able to survive. At the same time, just trying to do it yourself when you didn't have a physical market to sell.
Yes, it's hard to be a market when you can't be a market.
Yeah, exactly. So for you to turn that into a revenue stream that can be ongoing now was, really a brilliant pivot. I'm curious about the tools or systems you might be using to support that. We've already talked about the website, 600 stallholders you got to keep track of.
Yep.
Are you using any kind of like a CRM or any kind of technology to support that right now?
Yes, yeah. So we are actually doing an audit of all our systems at the moment because it's been a real scramble over the last few years, and we're using if only we all had shares in Zoom and all those types of things. But yes, we use quite a few systems. There are the usual Zoom, Canva. We use Teamwork, which we love, which is great for the team to be able to work together and be in contact with each other. Because two of our team members actually don't live in Canberra.
Oh, really? Was that before COVID as well?
No.
Always.
We were all in Canberra at that time. So now we have one in Newcastle and one in Melbourne.
Yeah. I guess it doesn't matter anymore, though.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So if nothing else, the pandemic sort of has opened up our eyes to what you can do. So that's been really interesting. Some of those things that were like, oh no, why would we do that? No, we won't do that. Where it's like, oh, you know what? Let's give that a go. That sounds okay.
Yeah.
We are using quite a few different systems to keep track of everybody and have it all going. And so at the moment we're just looking at all of that and making sure that we've got the right tools. Google Drive has sort of become our best friend at the moment, so we're getting there.
It might be the messiest friend at the moment, too.
Yes, yeah.
The other tools that I think about as also having that secondary business is the fact that there's not a lot of help for these small businesses for things like tracking their cost. Like cost of goods sold, if you're making something, there is not really any software out there for a small maker to help them identify how much does it actually cost me to make this.
Yeah. And again, we have small businesses with us that are everyone from the hobbyist right up to a proper full-on commercial enterprise. So, and we have everything in between. It's not really an area that we've got into too much, although we will. Again, if a stallholder comes to the market and they sell a lot but then don't make anything, again, they sort of go, oh, that wasn't very successful for me. And then so they say handmade wasn't very successful for me. They don't sort of, we want them to look at why. If we think they've got a great product, we really want to work with those people to go, all right, well, is it the fact that our customers just don't suit your product, or is it the pricing or the packaging, or the fact, we've got quite a few that create and make the most beautiful products, cannot talk to people, so they're not the best person to sell their products. So there's a lot goes into it as well. And again, we want all the stallholders to be as successful as possible, because then that reflects really well on us as well.
Yeah. Well, you could probably charge another stream of coaching
Yeah.
for all the work that you're doing to support them. Like you said, they can be selling a lot but not making anything because they're not charging enough, or they're not considering discounts and other things that they're doing. The other part that's a little bit complex is first of all, I didn't realize, as a naive person doing this for the first time, I didn't realize that there's actually different demographics for the markets in terms of customers.
Yes.
And how you would attract a different type of a person at this kind of market versus that kind of market, whether it's indoor or outdoor. I didn't know there were so many segments,
Sure.
even in the same city.
Yeah. Look, it doesn't matter if you're running a market stall or Myers. You should know your target market and you should know your customer. So as a stallholder, they should know who their customer is and who would purchase their product. But then they should also be asking the person that's running the market or the shop that's selling their product, who are their demographic, and do they align? Because it's a real thing. It's if you're making the most beautiful custom jewellery, but your starting price is $500 for a piece, and you're at an outdoor trash and treasure market, that's never going to sell. And that's not a reflection on the fact that your product may not be a good product or overpriced or anything. You're just selling it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So that's really important, probably one of the most important things.
How do you track the people that come through so that you know the demographics when people ask you that question?
We spend a lot of time working on this. We work on a lot. So everything from the SEO on our website, the hits on our social media, the targeted marketing that we do. We've got to look at then the people who walk through the door, who's spending the money, what are they spending it on. Our stall holders, what are the price of their goods, who's selling, who's not selling. And we put all of that together in a snapshot. But if you have 20,000 people come through to your market, that's a lot of demographics.
Yes.
And we used to say, if you're trying to sell to everybody, you're selling to nobody. But then we spent a bit of time looking around the market and thought, there's probably a little bit of everybody here. So we really need to look at who we're offering stalls to as well. So, you can come to the market and buy your $10 pair of earrings, and there's a massive market for that. And you can also come to the market and buy your $10,000 diamond ring, because there's a market for that as well.
Wow.
Of course, the person selling the $10,000 ring, they probably only need to sell one of those.
That's
but,
right.
they could talk to 500 customers to find that one customer, whereas the person selling the $10 pair of earrings need to sell 30 or 40 pairs. It's all relative. So we need to have a little bit of everything because we have a little bit of everybody walk through the door as well. And when you have such a big crowd, you're always going to get a very big demographic.
Yeah.
But we still spend a lot of time targeting the people who we think are going to match the stall holders that we have at the event.
Yeah, from your marketing.
yeah.
And from the stall holders, I imagine everybody knowing how successful it is wants to be a part of it. How do you prevent having, 20 candle makers?
Yeah. It's tricky. So again, that's one of the things of, even though we are Handmade Canberra and we're here in Canberra, if we were to have a market just with Canberra stall holders, it'd be quite a small market, because even though there might be a lot of makers here in Canberra, it's the diversity that you wouldn't be able to offer.
Yeah.
So that's why we have makers from all over Australia that come along. So it's quite tricky. The seasons play a little bit of a part in it. If you've got the swimwear, then you probably don't need to do the winter market. And if you've got the big knitted chunky woolen scarves, you probably don't need to do summer.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they can't, but it's just, if I have to choose somebody over somebody else, sometimes that will come into it. So again, you don't want, out of 290 stalls, 150 candle makers, but there's certainly space for 10 to 12 sort of, because they can all have different things. They can have different price points. They can have different scents. They can have smaller ranges. They can have, all sorts of different things come into play, so that I know that person who might only want to spend $15 on a candle will come to the market. So I will have X amount of those candle makers, but I also know there's a place for people who have got the triple scented candle that burns for 150 hours, and it might cost $90.
Yeah.
So, to the average person, they might go, well, why are there 12 people selling candles? But if you look closely, there might only be one or two of each demographic for a candle maker.
Oh, gosh. You almost need another building to try to, squeeze
it,
all that in.
It takes me easily a week to curate the market and work out who I will offer a stall to for all of those things.
Yeah. Now, we have a new market, hopefully actually live market in April.
Yes.
It'll actually be after this when we actually release this episode, but post that, assuming that for finally in 2.5 years you finally get your live one. What other plans do you have for the future?
The plans for this year is just to get ourselves sorted out, just to get markets back to what they were, make everybody happy, make sure that they're ticking along and that they're working really well. After that, we do actually have some big plans, and we were going to try and roll them out this year, and then thought that's the silliest thing we've ever tried to do. So this year is just about getting back to where we want to be. or where we were pre-pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And then we want to sort of concentrate a little bit on food and wine tourism as well.
Oh,
So
interesting.
bringing the foodies and the winemakers and all of that and concentrating on that here in Canberra. So we do have some plans for that.
Okay.
And then we also have some plans for creating more of that business support, those things that we've worked out that stall holders or anybody with a small business really need, that they really struggle with. We want to sort of concentrate on being able to provide those resources a little better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we go back to this whole idea of community and social impact for you, it's about your customer is first of all the stallholder, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah.
It's secondary, it's the end customer.
Absolutely, yeah. We always consider that we have two customers to consider. So we have the stallholders and we have their customers, both equally important to us.
Yeah, but year-round, the stallholders are what make the bigger markets happen, right? People come because the stallholders are there.
Without a stallholder, I don't have a market.
Yeah. Are you thinking about going outside of Canberra?
No.
Well, I know that you might have tried to expand past that before, but geographically, Canberra is still only 500,000 people.
Yep.
Your online stores, are they already doing that for you with the online capability?
Well, I guess in a sense they do. Yes, the online markets or events, yes, they have a reach Australia wide and worldwide. So, that's very exciting. But I don't want to take the physical market anywhere else. I want to bring the people to us. I don't want to take it to them.
Do you have competition with some of before the pandemic, I know Etsy was trying to do some local things as well. And they're already started online, then trying to go to physical, where you're physical trying to go to online. Do you see any competition because you're now doing both? Is that getting harder? Or?
Look, I think competition's a very healthy thing, and it's never really worried me. It took a few years to get to a certain place, but I still remember the day when the penny dropped, and I thought, what we do is great. And I'm really invested in it, and I'm really proud of what we do. We do it for the right reasons. We do it in the right way. And I was then I just wasn't concerned about what other people did. So I never really see them as competition. We just sort of stay in our lane and do what we do and do it well. It doesn't worry us. Maybe it should, I don't know, but it doesn't.
Well, I think that the most successful businesses out there are those that don't worry about competition. I'm just thinking further back to who your customer is and that sense of community, and knowing that you can provide so much support to makers and designers from a business perspective. You've obviously figured it out yourself and have had a lot of experience coaching other people. It just seems like that would be something that would be geographically independent, perhaps, if you're going to continue those kind of services.
Look, sky's the limit, really. We could do lots of things. We probably need somebody to get into the cloning a little bit better for us, for that to work really well, because we're such a small team. Look, we throw out big ideas all the time, and, we'd love to do something where we went Australia-wide and had conferences and helped people and talked to them and did coaching and we could do all of that. But essentially at the crux of what we do is we connect the stallholder or the maker to the person that wants to buy the product. So if it falls into that, then yes, it'll probably stay on the possible to-do list. And if it doesn't, then it's a nice idea, but sometimes we have to let it go.
Yeah, for sure. For those people that are out there that might be interested in being a stallholder, and they often will say, well, you do this so well, why don't you just sell your product as well? I know there's this whole fallacy of thinking that just because you have a great hobby that you really enjoy, that you should turn it into a business. Have you any advice for those kind of people that may be in that position and they're thinking about it?
Sure. Just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Look, I've seen some very, very simple product ideas and executed well. They're fantastic. And I've seen some businesses that I think this is a license to print money. This is fantastic, but they just don't quite get it. So, they need the help. And then there's the people that make something and their family tell them it's fantastic. And then they sell a few in the office and then somebody says, you should go to the markets and sell those. They're the people that probably just need to put a little more thought into it, because sometimes it's the simplest thing and it's fantastic and absolutely it takes off. It's great. And sometimes it's just, you just need to put a little more thought into it, I suppose. That's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
It seems like it would be very tempting when you're good at one thing and you get lots of feedback.
Absolutely. And, that's where the smaller markets that we do have, they're gold. You should go to one of those definitely and just see what sells and what doesn't sell. And is it the price or is it the product or, is it the demographic? And we prefer that people, if they're going to come to one of our events, because, again, it's really expensive to attend. You get your value for money, but it's still quite a commitment. You should start somewhere a little bit smaller so that by the time you get to an event the size of ours, that you're really confident in what will sell and what you're selling it for and everything's sort of polished up and finished off type thing.
Yeah, it's like practice elsewhere. Come to our market when you're ready.
Yeah, and because then it's not as big a commitment. And, if you come into one of our events and there's 20,000 people there, it's hard work and you're selling quite fast and it's quite hard. Whereas if you go to a smaller one, you can really talk and connect and talk to people about, the product and what they like and what could be improved. And so if you're in that real startup phase, going to smaller markets like that, they're gold. They're marketing gold. Definitely everybody should start somewhere like that.
You've obviously become a very good businesswoman from a hat maker who looks well beyond just the individual product now and now has become a coach to others. If there are other people out there that are trying to come up with are considering a social enterprise as part of their future, and they're trying to create a community, do you have any advice for them?
Be nice to people. You can never go wrong with being nice to people. Look, if they're starting if they want to create a community from a social enterprise, just listen to people, have your business plan, know what you want to achieve, be prepared to change that if you need to. Listen to people, take all of the advice, and then roll out what works for you. You don't have to roll out everything. Take it slowly. I've seen so many businesses just have the best idea and it's beautiful and it's profitable, and then next minute you see them announce that they're growing in this way and growing in that way, and then 6 months later they've closed down because they've just taken on too much. So don't be afraid to take it slowly. Don't be afraid to listen to people and ask for help. And don't be afraid to try something, have it fail and keep going.
Yeah.
Because that happens.
Well, you had a little physical store, didn't you, at some point?
We did, yeah, with the beautiful Rachel. So we owned a store on City Walk, and we had that for 5 or 6 years, and it did much the same thing. Stallholders rented space within the shop, and when we sold it, took our commission, gave the rest of the money back to the stallholders, and then it was redeveloped into units, so it was closed down, and we just sort of decided at that stage that, it had run its course and we'd sort of done that. And we did look at doing some other things, and they just didn't work out for different reasons. So there have been a few things that we've tried along the way that we thought would work, and then it just didn't quite fit our community. Like you said, it just didn't end up being what fit perfectly with our community, and so those things just we didn't carry through with them. But at the core of what we do, we've just continued to do the markets, and they have worked.
Yeah. Yeah, I think great advice, though, but also proof that you can try things, they may or may not work, and still survive that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Do you have any resources that you use to become a better business person yourself, whether it's podcast or books or?
No, I don't really subscribe or no. Isn't that terrible?
No,
I probably should.
Well, I got to quit asking this question because everybody ends up telling me it's people that they surround themselves with. And I'll be surprised if you don't, when you think about it, you probably are going to tell me the same thing.
Yeah, look, it can definitely be the people you surround yourself with. It's funny, no, you're very right. And again, I've had some that I thought were good and then that didn't quite work out, and some that have just been absolute gold. So Canberra's probably an amazing place for that. It's everybody knows everybody in Canberra, and it's a very small degree of separation. And I found them very friendly and happy to share. So I think that's a really good starting point. You're right. I never really thought about it that way. But yeah, talk to people around you. Talk to me, talk to, people that have done things before you, and just get their advice. And again, use the advice that works for you and file the rest away.
Yeah. Well, with that, if people want to know more about you or Handmade Canberra, where should they go?
So we do have a website, handmadecanberra.com.au. We have great Facebook and Instagram and Twitter pages. So social media, we love being very social, and we're always out there sharing stories and ideas and competitions and giveaways. So definitely they can connect with us in any of those formats.
Fantastic. Julie, I think people underestimate what you do as truly not just a business owner, but it really is a social enterprise because of the community you created. In no business would you have something cancel with people already spending lots of money and them saying, it's okay, Julie, we know you're trying. Like that doesn't happen in the commercial world at all. So that's why I think what you built is something very, very special. And hopefully with the pandemic largely behind us, you can finally start operating again as the business you've always intended to be. But at the same time, it sounds like you have so many interesting things for the future that stall holders, small businesses that you support will have a lot more resources for themselves. And it's great to hear.
Thank you. And thank you for making me think of our business that way. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tammy Ven Dange again. When I'm not doing podcasts, I'm actually helping not-for-profits with their IT decisions. And this week's segment for IT in plain English, I have a question regarding PCI compliant. Now, what exactly does it mean to be PCI compliant? Well, let's just start in plain English. What does PCI mean? PCI is Purchase Card Industry. It's basically all the credit card companies like MasterCard and Visa that are out there. And what they've done is they've created a set of rules or guidelines that are both technical and processes that anybody that wants to accept credit cards have to follow. And why does this matter to you? Well, these companies are trying to protect the data of their users. And the reason why is because if there is some fraud happening where unauthorized charge has occurred and it's been done by someone who's been fishing for information or has got a hold of the information in a different way, there's a likelihood that they're going to have to eat that cost themselves. So to protect themselves and to protect the data information of their users or the credit card users, they're actually imposing requirements for you as the organization that's accepting these credit cards. So how do you know if you're not actually in compliant? Here's some basic examples. One, if you're asking people to give you credit card information on paper or via email at any point in time, you're not PCI compliant. Another one, if you have an old system that actually shows credit card numbers, like for monthly donors as an example, and it's not truncated or completely taken out, then you're actually not PCI compliant right now. And a third one is if you're using a third-party system for things like event registrations or perhaps for donations, but you're actually importing that information into another system that you have internally, that information must be encrypted the entire time. And if it's not, you're not PCI compliant. Well, you might ask, I've been doing this for a long time and it's never been an issue before. So why should I care? Well, in the last 12 months alone, I've had a number of clients that have had cybersecurity breaches. And as soon as that happens, the credit card companies will issue a whole list of things that need to be done for you to continue to offer credit card capability to your donors or members or any other stakeholder. So obviously that's a big deal if they could turn off your services immediately. I highly recommend you go ahead and look into these things now rather than waiting for a cybersecurity issue to occur and to then have to do it on the vendor's deadline, not your own. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. If you do have an IT question of your own, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I just might read your IT question on this show. Now, for those of you who are executives with a cause, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you guys do. You and your teams are making a difference in this world, and please just keep doing what you do. Thank you.